Welcome to the Hunter Report, and the Sony Alpha series of cameras has custom buttons, wheels in the front and the back, dials, more custom buttons and switches. And there's a lot of complaints out there that the Sony menu system is difficult to use, but I say that's because you don't know how to use these cameras. If you properly configure all these custom buttons, everything is extremely ergonomic and within reach of your hand, and you can be a very proficient photographer or videographer. I'm going to show you exactly how I like to configure every one of these buttons, so let's get right into it. The first thing that we're going to do is do focus peaking, which means that when we twist the focus knob here, okay, we're going to see some beautiful red focus in the image. And the way you do that is you go into menu and you hit peaking level. And I like my peaking at high. I like my color red. Now you see we're up here in the gear in number 2. I'm not going to call that out every time. You should just be able to see it. So let's move forward. Alright, so peaking is on, and you have to go into manual focus mode. So let's switch into that. And you see there's a whole bunch of red. And as we twist the zoom ring here, you see the red goes away as it becomes out of focus, and the red goes into focus. And there's another feature that I like to use, which is called MF Assist. So we just turn that on. Now let's twist our zoom ring, our focus ring, and you see it goes way up. Now most of the time I'm shooting in AFS or AFC. Sometimes the autofocus system is so distracted lens hunting that you have to switch down into manual focus, otherwise you're never going to get the shot. And with MF Assist, I know exactly that I'm razor focused. You can literally see the grains in my lens there, and that's exactly where I want to be. But it's really a pain in the butt to hit the function button here, go into focus mode, switch down to manual focus. That's a big time waste, especially when we have an AF/MF button here. So let's go back into an autofocus mode, AFS, and let's hit the button here. You saw the peaking went on, and that's another great thing about having peaking is you know that you're in manual focus mode. The moment I let go, it stops manual focusing. I don't really want to be holding this button up here, okay, with my thumb here, and then have to hit the shutter at the same time. That's just like, no. I want this button to just press and it to go into autofocus mode. So the way we do that is we hit into menu, and that's over here in 6. We go to page 2 of that, and we can actually configure the AF/MF button. You can actually put it to whatever you want. There's a whole bunch of choices. But we were at control hold, but we want to be at control toggle. So now when we hit this little button here and go, it stays in MF mode. So that's really what I need so that I can free up my fingers to be using them to hold the camera steady and other things like that. The next thing we need to turn on is zebraing. Now, zebras are basically only in Sony at the moment, and I find them to be the most useful thing ever. Now, zebra lets you know that a particular part of the screen is overexposed. So let's go ahead right here to the ISO, and as you see, it's coming into exposure, and now let's actually try and overexpose it. So we're seeing right around here, from 10,000 to 12.8, the zebras start appearing. Now most of the image is zebraing, and basically, I like to shoot in manual focus all the time. With zebras, it's really not a big deal. So the moment a zebra occurs, I just step down one, stop there. Or I'll even go up here, adjust my shutter, my aperture. Okay, that's another way to adjust the exposure triangle. Or up here and do the shutter speed. Okay, and these are all giving you basically one stop or half stop of exposure, and then you can see that zebraing is happening. So basically, I go to the zebra point and then I back off one so that I know I have the maximum light. And since I'm in manual exposure mode, let's just step back a little here. So according to DxOMark, this 24 to 70 has a sweet spot of f8. So let's make sure that we are indeed at f8. And let's also commit to 1/200th of a second. We're not shooting action, we're not shooting sports, because then you'd want to be 400 and above. But we're shooting some people, they're chatting, and we want to capture any facial movement, hand movement, so 200. Then the only variable we have is ISO. And let's just go down. We see nothing changes. You see right around here, 20,000. Again, we're shooting the A7S II, so it's not a big deal. 20,000 is the point of no return, where we really get a lot of zebraing. So let's just back off from that one step to ISO 16,000. And now we found really the perfect settings for the shot. And let's nail it, and boom, you got it. So that's really why having zebras makes shooting in manual mode so powerful and easy. All right, now let's talk about our function buttons. We've got C1 here and C2 right here. So C2 is right here, and it's very close to the shutter button. Okay, so really C2 is your primary button. And I like C2 to be my autofocus setting. So let's go ahead right now and click C2. Right down here we get a few options. And there's actually two different ways to change your focus point, okay? I'm rotating the front dial here, and that gives me, and then the back dial here gives me left and right. And that's to keep everything, you know, contained within here so that you're really not moving your hand. The other option is if you want to play it like a video game, just hit C2, and then right here with your thumb, you can go right, you can go up, you can go left, down, and then rotating the wheel will change the focus mode, which is also quite powerful. Left, right, you know, up, down, to keep the rule of thirds. So boom. Speaking of rule of thirds, I already have the grid on, but I didn't show you how to do that. And you just go right here, and you can choose between rule of thirds, a square, diagonal, or no grid. I like rule of thirds. Okay, so now the question is, what do we put for C1? So let's hit C1, and as you see, I've got silent shooting. Now, there are two main pitfalls to silent shooting. The first is rolling shutter if you're moving the camera, and the second pitfall is banding is going to occur. And check out my video on silent shooting where I really go into depth on that. But there are situations where the person isn't moving fast and there is no banding, and I'm gonna just pop into silent shutter right there, quickly take a shot, you know, exactly here. There's absolutely no difference, and then pop out if I need to. Speaking of shutters, next let's talk about our wheel here. As you see, I've got ISO on the wheel, and that has to be set. So I go into menu, go down here to custom key settings, and let's just take a step back before we set the control wheel. Let's take a step back and review everything we can set. So we can do the control wheel, we can do button 1, we can do button 2 right here, we can do button 3, which is right up here, we can do button 4, which is C4, it's also the trash button. We can set the center button, we can set the left, which is the left press of the wheel, the right press of the wheel, the up, the that. We can actually set the AEL, so that means we flip into AEL here, and then when we press the button there, that's an option. Now, as I said, I shoot in manual mode. So AEL stands for auto exposure lock. It has absolutely no value in manual mode. So we're gonna set that, as you can see, to audio recording level, which helps for video. You can set the AF, MF to anything, and you can set the focus hold button. Now the focus hold button is actually not on the camera, and it's only on certain lenses. Typically G-series lenses like this 70 to 200 right here, and this is the focus hold button. So that can be assigned as well, and there's actually 3 of them on the lens. Now the question is, what do we put for custom button number 3, which is right up here? And let's hit it, I like to have drive mode, so that I can save a click to go into high-speed mode versus normal mode, and I like that. Again, you can assign it to whatever you want. The next setting you have to turn on is smile versus face detection. Now this is really valuable for weddings and works in combination with the memory mode, which is all the way over here, and you can, as you see, I took a picture of myself in the mirror, and in combination with face detection right here in this mode, those memorized faces will take priority. Typically, if you're just shooting a random event, you're just going to want normal face detection on. And I don't like smile shutter on, which causes the camera to shoot and really takes any creative control out of the process. But face detection is good now. And you see that there's a white box around the guy's face. Again, let's turn that off. Now we're not seeing a white box. So that helps the camera in all focus modes. And it really doesn't hurt to have it on. Now my wheel is set to ISO, and in combination with my wheel up here, which controls aperture, and my wheel right back here, which controls shutter speed, I have the exposure triangle at hand's reach. Very ergonomic, maybe just a slightly bit small, but still pretty ergonomic. Now we have an option of assigning custom button 4, which is right over there. We hit it and it takes us to memory settings mode. This sets the current settings of the camera to register 1 and 2, and the optional 3 and 4. And the beautiful thing about all alpha full-frame cameras, and even the A6300, is you get 1 and 2 here. So if I just switch over here to 1 versus 2, and I use that to switch between continuous autofocus for shooting fast-moving dynamic scenes versus single-shot autofocus for shooting flashes. So this right up here is my main way of switching between single-shot autofocus and continuous autofocus. So this is my button right there. But my number 4 there is a quick way of getting to there. Otherwise, I'd have to go menu and then fiddle around through the menu system to find memory recall and memory setting. See, I don't even remember where it is. There it is, right at the edge of menu 9. Memory is so important because let's go into setting 1, okay? And we already see way overexposed, and we know the lighting is going to be the same for the whole shoot. So we want to really reset that to a much lower ISO, somewhere around 1000. Where the zebras stop. And the way we do that, we just hit the C4 right down here, and we just hit the center button to commit that to register 1. So now let's go back to manual mode up here, and we see that there's lots of zebras, and if we just switch back quickly to setting 1, it's back to ISO 1000, and having quick access to memory, to me, is one of the most powerful ways to take advantage of these memory buttons, 1 and 2, right there. For my center button, I like center lock on AF. Okay, so now it's grabbing my lens barrel. No matter where we move the camera, it tracks that lens barrel. Then we hold down the shutter button, and it becomes green. So it's a different way of focusing. Again, my favorite autofocus mode is simply flexible spot. It just tends to work faster than even center lock on AF, which takes too much time and doesn't work 100% of the time. But it's always nice to have it in the tool bag. If we hit the function key right here, you'll see that there's an entire menu. And I'm going to do another video on that, so check for this link right up here, and you can really see my in-depth video on setting that. But just to give you a quick preview, you can go right here to function menu set, and that lets you choose all 12 function buttons and assign them, which is basically your first level of your menu system that you want most readily available after you've set your entire custom button. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, please give me thumbs up, and check the description below if you want to figure out where to purchase these products. See you soon.